Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Tina Dawson, the owner of True Blue Designs, and I thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and share and let everyone know that we're on the air. Tonight, we are streaming simultaneously on Facebook Live and our YouTube channel. Before we get started, I just want to send a heartfelt thank you to everyone that attended our 13-year anniversary celebration shows during the month of March. March is our anniversary month. And I just want to say thank you so much for people who have tuned in and people who have really supported the broadcast. The purpose of it is to educate, inspire, and motivate you, the viewer, by bringing on guests that will share in their testimony and in their journey of where they've been in life. So many people have, just interesting stories. And this provides a platform for people to share who they are, what they do, and give the inside perspective of what they know. So I just want to take the time out to say thank you. Tonight's guest is, I've been trying to get him on this show for a year. And Dwayne Peterkin is a real good friend, but he has a very interesting story. So I wanted to bring him on tonight. Between 2020 and 2024, the global classic car market is projected to grow steadily from roughly 30.9 billion US dollars in 2020 to some 43.4 billion US dollars in 2024. Vintage cars are particularly popular in Europe and North America. What is so special about classic cars? Classic pieces keep things simple. It is also because of their simplicity that classic cars make great DIY projects, since owners can get right under the hood and start working comfortably. Tonight's guest has a passion for classic cars, so much that he has started a YouTube channel featuring car shows, owners, and people in the classic car industry. Please help me give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, the host of Extinct Legends Car Show, Mr. Dwayne Peterkin. Let me get you on here. There we go. There we go. How are you, sir? Oh, hold on. That was me. How are you?
I am great. It's good to be here. It's like you said, this is what, about a year or two in the making, but we finally made it happen. So I'm excited to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for saying yes, and I'm so glad I could get you on the show.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, how's your family?
Everyone is well. We're blessed. Everything is good. Cannot complain. The kids are doing good. The wife and I are doing good. So yeah, God is good.
All the time.
All the
time. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on the show. I know your passion for classic cars, and we've talked extensively about it. But I wanted you to be able to share that with tonight's audience. So we're going to start off by you telling tonight's audience, the viewers, a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Tina, again. Let's see, where do I start, right? Born in Canada, raised in New York, and did high school in Miami. So I'm a little bit of a gypsy. I'm a little bit from all over West Indian background. So, I mean, you name it, I got it in me. And, just always have had a love for cars. But, I do IT. I'm an IT systems engineer by trade. Mm-hmm. But my passion is definitely with the cars. And I've had the car bug since I was a little kid. And, when I was growing up, we used to build models and things like that. We paint them and we do all kinds of stuff with them, customize them, and take parts from the dragsters and then put them in
Mhm.
the regular cars, and the scoops would be out there, and we do all that kind of stuff. So um, just it's always been in me. It's always been in me. And how Extinct Legends came about is I actually got laid off due to COVID off of one of my contracts.
Mhm.
So as a contractor in IT, sometimes you never know when your next job comes up. So you don't
Mhm.
really, take too many vacations or things like that. You never know how long you'll be in between contracts, right? So I have been working, working, working. And I kept saying, the joke was, Lord, just give me 2 weeks. I just want like 2 weeks to chill. And then, the next contract will come in or whatever. Little
Right.
did I know that was going to be 10 months.
Oh, wow.
And within that time, the way I always kind of like de-stress from work is like, okay, I don't want to be around a computer. I'll get on YouTube and then I'll
Mhm.
get start looking at videos of classic cars, and I'll be like, well, where the Buicks at, and and where's some of the older Mopars at? Like, you'll see the common cars,
Mhm.
but I was like, where's these other cars that I'm like looking for, Grand Prix and things like that. And someone just told me, well, shoot, if it ain't out there, maybe you need to do it. So I was
Mhm.
like, I'm not working, I'm not doing anything else. And, we're in Florida here. The weather's nice. There's always a car show. And, I just started going around and going to car shows and talking to people. And one thing led to another. And here we are. So, that's pretty much my background. I'm an IT guy, but I'm a car lover at heart.
So, talk a little bit about car shows because they have quite a few here in Atlanta, and I've never gone. So, tell us a little bit about what goes on at car shows.
Well, I mean, car shows are everybody who has a classic car. You're not
Mhm.
going to find somebody who's going to say, oh no, I don't want you to look at my car or whatever. Everybody, that's their pride and joy, right? And they want people to see what they've done. And you may have two of the exact same cars, but you're never going to see them exactly alike. Somebody's put
Okay.
their flavor on it. They've done their little thing with it. And it's all in those little details, and the shows are a place where, you can come together, and it's like a fraternity, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it doesn't matter, your color, your age, your background, whatever. It's all about the cars. That's the universal, connection between the people. So the shows are all about, really showing off what you've done. And not only that, the networking is a big piece of
Yeah,
the classic car industry, because
I can
you're going to find
imagine.
another guy be like, hey man, who did that for you, or where did you get that piece? I've been looking for that piece for
Mhm.
like 2 years. And they'll be like, oh, you got to see so and so. And so it's a connection on steroids. I mean, there's so many different things happening at the shows. And then some of them have crews. It might be a crew of guys that have 4 or 5 cars, and then they're coming out, and there's another crew and things like that. So there's always something going on at the car show. So it's an electricity in the air. And you go to a show, you never know what you're going to see. You might see something extremely rare, or
Mhm.
maybe a model that you don't usually see, and then when you see it, you're like, wow, I got to talk to this guy. Like, I haven't seen one of those since I was a kid, or something like that. So I think no one ever knows what they really are going to see when they go to a car show, and that's why you go, because
Okay.
there's going to be something there that wows you.
Yeah, the anticipation of seeing something new.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've convinced me. The next time we have one here in Atlanta, I am going to go.
Yeah, and there's plenty in Atlanta. There's plenty of car shows.
Yeah, there are. And I had said I wanted to go, but then when me and you start talking about what you do, is kind of tapped into my interest.
Okay,
Okay, I'm gonna make sure I go and I'm gonna report
that's right.
back. So you were
Definitely.
talking about the different cars that you see at the car shows, and you talked a little bit about um, how you were looking for different types of cars when you were searching the internet. So let's talk a little bit about the brand or the types of cars that interest you as far
Hmm.
as classic cars.
Well, I've always been what they call a Mopar guy. And some people who don't know what Mopar is the mother company or the parts company of Chrysler, Plymouth, and Dodge back in the day. So if
Okay.
you had a Chrysler, a Plymouth, or a Dodge, that's a Mopar car. And
Mm-hmm.
so when people talk about Mopar, that's what they're talking about, those specific models. And
Okay.
those are your Chargers, GTXs, Challengers, Barracudas, Furies, Polaris, all those different kind of cars. And the one that's my favorite is the Fury, and that series is called a C body. So
Mm-hmm.
those were when they were big, and I think about 200 and something inches long. So they're about like almost around 19 feet. These are like big cars, and they're just my first classic car was a 1965 Plymouth Fury 3 convertible, and so I've
Mm-hmm.
always been a Mopar guy. So those are my favorites, and so I have a soft spot for Mopar, and I like them because they're you know Chevy is so huge. There's so many numbers of their cars. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's Corvettes, millions of those,
Mm-hmm.
and Camaros and Chevelles, and there's so many. But of the Mopars, the numbers aren't as high in production as they are for
Okay.
Chevy, which is a plus and a minus because when you're going to look for parts and things like that, if you got a Chevy, they're still making aftermarket parts for the Chevys nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
so it's easy to get parts. But as far as the Mopars, you really not need to go to some of those car shows. And then, going back to what you asked about the car shows, there's also ones that have swap meets. And the swap meets are like the flea market of the car show. So that's where you can get those rare parts. And somebody's coming out to bringing a trail of parts. These are all 1960, uh, uh, like Corvette parts or
Mm-hmm.
moldings and handles and those hard to find parts you'll find at those swap meets. So that's another thing that brings people out to the car shows because you might be looking for that one part like I got to go to this car show.
One
Somebody
part.
out there's
Yeah.
gonna have it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can't wait to go now. But that makes sense though, because if you have or if you're a rare parts dealer,
Hmm.
that's a perfect spot, a perfect place to go
Right.
to bring those items because that's where people are going to buy. That makes sense.
That's your target market right
That's
there.
your
Yeah.
target
And
market.
and
Yeah.
believe me, the people are coming to you. You don't, you just have to just post up and
Mhm.
get your little spot. But the people, they're looking for you. They're looking for you when they come out
Wow. So
there. Mhm.
as you've been interviewing people on your show, what are some of the reasons why people are attracted to classic cars?
Well, one of the things I found, and I think this is one of the main reasons. Uh, a lot of people, as I go to the shows, right?
Mhm.
It's not 20-year-old people who are driving some of these classics. Some of these
Right.
people are like 60 years old, 50 years old, and better, right? And
Yeah.
and and what it is when you were younger, whenever you were in high school, this is kind of like the rule. Whatever you wanted as your car in high school and you couldn't afford it, those are the cars nowadays that people are going back to try and find. Now that they're
Okay.
successful, they've
That
raised
makes
their kids, the retirement's coming in or whatever. Now they're going to go ahead and drop that money and get that car that they always wanted. So I
wow.
think that's one of one of the big factors.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Because back in the day, I've heard some people say they don't make them like they used to.
Hmm.
So many fiberglass versus steel, and
Right.
like you said, the body length. Back in the day, if you had a car and you
Hmm.
got in a car accident, the likelihood of a lot of damage happening to it was very little compared to the cars
Yeah.
today. So you
Uh,
hear
it-
people say they don't make them like they used to.
that's right. Funny thing, funny, this is a true story. I had my
Uh,
65 Plymouth Fury, and I'm driving. I'm in New Jersey. I'm in Elmwood Park, New Jersey, and I'm going down the road, and the light in front of me turns red, and I go,
mhm.
it was like yellow, and I knew I couldn't go through it, right? So I go to slam on the brakes, and I must have hit it so hard, and in that 65 Plymouth, the brake line popped. I was only going about 10 miles an hour,
Oh wow!
but I couldn't stop. And this lady pulled out. I'll never forget. She was driving a red Chevy Lumina, and she pulls out, man. And I hit her car. I must have been going at all of 7 miles an hour by the time I hit her car. Man, the whole front end of her car was all tore up, and I literally took a speck of paint off of my chrome bumper, and that was all the damage that
That
happened to
was
my car.
it.
And she was like, "That is not fair." She said, "Look what you're driving. Look what you're driving." I'm like, "Ma'am, I am so sorry. My brakes went out." But it's so true. I mean, if you had two deuce and a quarters back in the day getting in an accident, both of you got out the car and got out and looked and see what happened. Be like, "Yeah, we're all right.
Wow.
I'll see you later." And now, they don't even do like body work anymore. They're just replacing parts.
Yeah.
If you get into a fender bender today, I don't care what it is, it's like 2 grand because they're just ordering all new parts. They're not even fixing anything anymore.
No, no, yeah. I had a friend that just called me Monday and said she had gotten to she got into two car accidents,
Oh
I
wow.
think a couple of days before.
Mm,
So one gentleman hit her on the right side.
hmm.
Okay, so then she had that one claim. Then a couple of days later, I think it was a couple of days later, she something happened on the interstate and she spent and crashed up the car, and she showed me the pictures and she was like, they told her, don't forget that. We
Yeah,
towed that car out.
yeah, that's it. They're not even trying to fix that.
Mm-mm. They're not even trying to fix it. And it just looks like just a messed up ball of, I'm not gonna say steel, but it's fiberglass, really.
Right, right.
You know. So how old does a car have to be considered classic, antique, or vintage?
So if my memory serves me correct, 20 years is a classic.
Okay.
20 to 25 years is a classic. 30 years is an antique.
Okay.
And vintage, I believe, is 40 and over.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So say that again. So
So classic is 20. It depends on certain states. So like if
right.
you want to get that
Mhm,
plate, they have
mhm.
different things. But 20 to 25 years is considered classic.
Okay.
And then 30 years is antique.
Hmm.
And I believe it's 40 plus. Some may say 50, but 40 plus is like vintage.
Okay. And let me ask you this too. So once you restore the car and you want to put it on the road, is
Hmm.
there a special classification that you have to get for that car when you get your tag?
Well, in Florida here, we have about 100 different tags you can get. So
Oh,
really, if you want a vanity tag, there's no real classification. But in order to
okay.
get the historic tag, it
Right.
must be 30 years here in
Okay.
Florida.
30 years. Okay.
30,
So
yep, 30
everybody needs
years.
to check their local area
Right.
on, okay, on the
Hmm.
classification and how many years. Okay.
Correct.
See, learn
Hmm.
something new every day. Okay. I think I asked, let's see. Um, and so what are we went over the cars that you like, but
Hmm.
what are the most common classic cars?
uh, I think that's kind of a loaded question because you got different years as well because there's
Okay.
50s cars, there's 40s, every decade there's different cars, and there's
Okay.
some that are more common than others in those different years.
Okay.
But right now I can honestly say, in what I'm seeing in the market
Yeah.
right now, a lot,
Mhm.
right now Camaros and Chevys are booming. Corvettes are always booming, right?
Okay.
And
Mhm.
but the Chevelles right now, just seeing a lot of Chevelles, a lot of Camaros. um the Oldsmobile Cutlasses are holding it down a little bit too.
Wow. I remember them.
Yeah, yeah, and so those are like a lot more common. There's a lot of Fords out there. Mustangs, are always going to be out. Corvettes are always going to be out.
Hmm.
Um, but I think even the market has changed in the past few years. It's really about the 40s, 50s, and 60s cars. Those are like the hot rod era and
Hmm.
things like that. But now a lot of those sleeper cars in the 70s that you weren't really like checking for are starting to come up big time in
Wow.
the car market now. So there's a lot of 70s cars that are normally wouldn't have commanded a lot of money are now
Hmm.
being sought out. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say pretty much anything that's pretty much a classic right now is being sought out because years ago you used to get these cars for $500. $700. You
Really?
get some old car, but
Mhm.
when things like Pimp My Ride came out and
Love that show.
yeah, Ship Foods came out with
Love that show.
overhauling and stuff like that. Then everybody thought their car was a classic, no matter what it
Mhm.
was. It's like, dude, that's not really a classic. But it really changed the car market. And
Yeah.
as you let off with, now we're talking $1 billion industry of
Mhm.
classic cars. So things you used to be able to get for cheap, you're not getting cheap anymore, and they're becoming a very good investment. And things are changing. And another thing that's happening right now that I've been featuring this season on Extinct Legend is the Japanese car market. The
Mm.
Japanese cars market is exploding right now, and a lot of the old Supras, the Acura NSXs, even the old Corollas and things that were beaters when I was in high school. That you weren't getting a nice car, you had to get a Corolla, or you had to get something old.
Yeah.
Even those old Corollas, those old Mazdas, things like that, they're going for like $28,000, $30,000. These old cars that used to
What?
be $400 and $500 back in the day. So yeah, things are just,
Wow.
you never know what's going to be the thing. But back to your original question, Chevys, I think right now are very, very popular. And you used to be able to, when you were hooking up a Chevy, you put a 350 in there, and everybody was like, wow, he's got a nice 350 crate motor. Now, if you're not putting the LS motor, which is like what comes in the Corvette, if you're not putting
Mhm.
the LS motor in your car, you're not saying nothing nowadays. So even the classic car game now is kind of changing a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I can see how those shows, Pimp My Ride and those other shows, I can
mhm,
see how they really influence the market.
they really did.
I used to love that show. And then before COVID, maybe 20 minutes from me, there was a car restoration place
Mm, mm,
that would not necessarily classic cars, but they would, like you said, take an older model car, or take your car,
mhm.
and I call it pimping it out.
Yeah.
But because of COVID, they closed. So yeah,
Mm.
yeah, it's nice to hear that market is coming back.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's a form of artistry.
It
I
is.
Yeah, yeah, it's a form of artistry.
Like, matter
So
of fact, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I
Uh-huh.
was just gonna say, like, as you talk about artistry,
Mhm.
I got a little secret that I don't know if I'm letting it out the bag yet, but
Go
anyway,
ahead. That was gonna be my question. That was
no,
gonna
no,
be my
well,
next
all right. But I will say, as you talk about artistry,
question.
some of these people who are doing interiors for these cars, I
Uh-huh.
mean, that's they're that diamond stitching, and they're
That's a
using the sewing
skill.
machines, and they're cutting this material, and they're making these interiors. That's really an art, and
Mhm.
it's something to be respected, and there's not a lot of people doing it or doing it well.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely a skill set, and when you see these cars with that leather and that stitching, and the way it's just the side panels fit and the dash looks nice.
Wow.
That's somebody's craft, that's somebody's art,
Yeah.
and you have to really respect that.
Yeah, and it's a very unique niche market.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm going to ask this next question, then we're going to pivot into what you started talking about. Okay, so if if I wanted to purchase a classic car, right? So let's go over the steps, right? That one will have to go through. And I know everybody's steps are different, but just in general, right?
Hmm.
So if I'm interested in finding, say, um, a car that would be considered classic, right? Not
Hmm.
antique, but classic, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
what is the first step that I have to do? How could I find an older model car? Where are some of the places people can look?
Well, I'm gonna tell you how I would do it.
Okay, that's fine. That's
I
fine.
would fill up my gas tank and
Mhm.
take a ride out in the country, just ride around. And I'll tell you what, my wife says to me, she's like, "You got an eye for these old cars." I'd be like, "Did you see behind that house? Did you see what they have back there?" And I'm ready to like bust a U-turn and go back to these people's house and knock on the door, right? And I remember hearing back in the day that I think it was Big Boy from Outkast
Mhm.
would talk about how he just put $5,000 in his pocket and drive out there to the country in Georgia and stuff like that, and just go around and looking to see what it's out there, and offering some of these people money for cars. But the blessing nowadays that we have the internet, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I would, look at Craigslist,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some of your eBays, and there are trade magazines, certain auto trader classics, and things
Okay.
like that. So number one, you got to know your budget,
Okay.
right? And because sometimes these things can be a money pit, so you have to be prepared. Two things you have to do when you're looking for a classic car. What you have to have two things: patience and money.
Okay.
so
Okay.
so so you really need to say, okay, this is what I'm willing to spend. And then if you're like me, I'm a computer guy by trade, right? So I'm not
Mm-hmm.
a mechanic, I'm not
Right.
machining, I'm not welding, I'm not doing that. You either want to find something that you can get maybe cheap that needs some work so you can build on it,
Okay.
because you're going to come out probably cheaper by doing some work to it to get it to where you want.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you have the money and the budget for it, then you just go buy a turnkey that you don't have to turn no wrenches on. You can just turn the key and drive it, right?
Right.
And there's plenty of places out there now that are specializing in consignment uh,
Mm-hmm.
cars, where owners are putting their cars in, like Street Side Classics is
Mm-hmm.
one of the places I like to go, um, to look for classic cars. And they have several locations throughout the United States. So they got cars in California, cars in Texas, cars in the Carolinas, cars in Florida. And you can literally, if you have your heart set on a certain make and model, chances are you can find it through their system and things like that. So
Okay.
really, again, it depends on your budget, and kind of like what car you're looking for.
Okay. Now let's talk about, so you found the car. Now let me ask you this, and I know this may be a crazy question, but you were talking about driving around and spotting cars. Now,
Hmm.
I'm sure that if the car is not running, it'll probably be cheaper than if the car was working, right?
Correct,
And
correct.
then you can get the car towed, right? Into my
Hmm.
next question. So, what is the difference between the body repair shop versus a restoration shop versus you doing it yourself?
So again, it goes back to, are you good with your hands?
Mm,
Because obviously you are going to save money. The more you can do yourself, the better off you're going to be, right?
right.
And you have to have the facility in order to do it.
Mhm.
There's a lot of tools involved. If it's a classic, you're talking a lot of steel. So you're talking a lot of metal fabrication. You might be sanding, grinding, stuff like that. And if you're the average homeowner, you don't really have that much garage space, or maybe a
Right.
place to do all that. So that's the one thing on the DIY, you're definitely going to save your money. And then there's that pride factor, knowing that you did it yourself and you brought this piece back to what it is, right?
Right.
Now, a regular body shop, and again, going back to what I'm saying today, you might bring to some body shops, you might bring a classic car in there. They'll be scared. They're like, hey, man, all we do is order, and we remove and replace. That's all we do. But some
Right.
of these cars need, like, again, manufacturing. They need
Right.
some, and some classics, sometimes you got to make parts. Sometimes you
Mm,
have to rebuild parts because it's not available. So that leads you to a
wow.
restoration shop that specializes in doing restorations, where
Okay.
they're going to source the parts for you. They're going
Hmm.
to make them if need be, and they have skilled master welders, master body men, people who have been in this industry and in this trade for a long time, that are going to do the quality work in which you're expecting. And then again, that goes back to budget, because if you have, like, say, a 55 Lincoln, or like a rare car or something like that, you don't want to take it down here to, Mako. You're
Right.
trying to take it to these guys who they
Yeah.
specialize this, and they're going to bring it back to those A1 standards. Now, I have
Right.
a I know I have a neighbor who does old Jaguars and things like that, and his cars go to Pebble Beach. He does everything in his house but paint. So he does the
Okay.
metal work. He does everything. He restores these cars. And when you go to, like, somewhere like Pebble Beach, or one of these Grand Concourse kind of shows where it's like $1 million cars, and Ralph Lauren's bringing his car out, Jay Leno's bringing his
Wow.
car out. These kind of people, the judges are looking at everything, every inch of that car. They're looking to see if it's laser straight. Has this been hit before, or if it has
Mhm.
been, the repair work, what kind of restoration was done. So, that's the difference between a body shop and a
Okay.
restoration shop.
Okay. Yeah. So the
Hmm.
body shop is take off and replace. Yeah, that I see that. Yeah. Versus the
Hmm.
restoration. This is what they do.
Right,
Right. So they specialize in doing this.
right.
So yeah, that makes sense. And like you say, your neighbor, I mean, there's some things he can do himself, but
Hmm.
you know, I was gonna say also that this is why now I understand why the car shows are very important, right?
Hmm.
Because the networking, once you find the car, you need to know I need this, I need that, and you can find those pieces through networking at the car show. So that makes
Absolutely.
sense. That makes sense.
Hmm.
Okay. So you are working on a project.
Hmm.
So let's talk about your journey to working on this project, right? So I do want to talk a little bit about, you're making the decision to work on the project and the challenges you may have ran into while on the project. So let's talk a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say had, and so this
Okay.
is gonna be a long answer to your
Okay, that's
question, right? But I will answer the question.
fine. Okay, that's fine.
So for many years, I've had a 1995 Acura Legend coupe, which was the back in the day that was a drug dealer car. I mean, you get pulled over just because you have that car. I mean, that car was beyond it, or ahead of its time. I
Hmm.
mean, that body style to this day is still one of the sexiest cars that's been out. And anyway, so I had this car, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna make this one cherry, right? So I had two Legends previously, and one I actually bought at an auction, a police auction, and it had a 6 speed in it, which was very rare.
Hmm.
But the car was real rusty. It sat for many years, so it was kind of like more of a parts car than actually could drive. It could drive, but I never registered it. And I said, all right, I got to find another one. Then I
Okay.
found a '94. Had a little accident with that one, so I was like, man, I got to get another one. And so I got the '95, and I said, now I got the '95. The last year they made about of this car. Now it's a black on black, which is as highly sought after. Now I'm gonna put the 6 speed in the black car, and this is going to be the best of the best, the ultimate thing, right? So I searched around, and when you have a classic, you have to find the right mechanics, and you have to find the right people. So I thought I found the right one. Long story short, my car was at this guy's house for 2 years, and he never did the work that he was supposed to do for two
Two
years.
years.
And I would call and be like, "Do you need parts?" And I'm
Oh
accumulating
my
parts as
goodness.
I go, right?
Uh-huh.
And it turned out not to really be a good experience. And so I learned, number one, anybody who has your car more than 2 to 3 months that's not doing what you want them to do, you need to get that car out of their possession, get your car back. I've heard nightmare stories of people who have taken cars to places and never getting their parts back, or some of the parts that they gave them were sold for other people's cars.
Oh wow.
It's really bad. So you really have
Mhm.
to find the right person to work on your car, right? So that was one challenge that I went through. And
Mm.
so I said, I need to go back to my roots. Maybe I'm going to go back to a Mopar, because when you talk about
Mhm.
simplicity of cars, my old Fury, I needed 3 wrenches, and I used to just keep them in my glove compartment. I either needed a half inch, a 3/4, or like a 5/8 or something like that,
Uh,
and that's all I needed to work on that car and do everything so simple, right?
right.
And so with the Japanese car, it's just a lot more parts, a lot of more electronics and things like that. So kind of lost my taste for that project. So I had an opportunity to pick up a Barracuda, and a Mopar car, nice Barracuda, and but it was, again, not really. It was rusty. It was not really like the one. You wanted it to be
Mhm.
the one. So Now, here's how the story gets interesting. So at one of my first videos that I did, unemployed, just starting the channel, just doing whatever, I went to
Mhm.
Meekum Auto Auctions and I met a guy at Meekum who was selling a Resto Mod Challenger. Now, a Resto Mod is when they take an old car, like a 60s car, but they put like a year 2000 motor in it,
Okay.
2000 suspension, like everything's brand new, but from what you see, everything's an old car, but the
Okay.
guts of it and the mechanics and everything is something new. That's
It's
that's what
new.
they call
Okay.
Resto Mod, and that's a whole genre of classic car in itself. And those things go for like 100,000 and
Wow.
more because there's probably about 400 to 500 man hours in these cars.
Mhm.
These guys have done so much work, right? So
Right.
anyway, I just started talking to this guy, and this is how things just start to happen organically. I met him and I just started talking to him and he was telling me about his car and things like that, whatever. And we struck up a relationship and he's up in Georgia and I had to be up in Georgia one time. And I said, hey man, I'm in town. And he said, oh yeah, come over. You want to see what I'm working on? I got this GTX out here. This guy's done movie cars, Fast and Furious cars and things like that.
Okay.
And so we struck up this relationship. So anyway, I'm telling him about this Barracuda. The guy was telling me about this car. And I said, well, I got to call my Mopar guy. I sent him pictures and everything. And he's like, Dwayne, yeah, that's not really it, man. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to cost you a lot of money. And I don't know, I know you like that, but that's not the one. I was like,
Mm.
all right, but I respect your opinion. I mean, this is your industry, so, I respect that. And, about an hour or two later, he sends me a text. He's like, hey, I was just looking around. He says, what about this? And he sends me a 67 Fury. And I'm like, speaking my language here.
Right.
You're talking C bodies, talking Furies. That's nice. And then he's like, dang, and he sends me another. He says, Dwayne, what about this? And I was like, wait a minute, hold up. That's a 66. I was like, oh, you're getting closer to what I used to have, right?
Uh-huh.
So long story short, this guy went out here and found me my car and he's restoring it and doing the
Wow.
interior and everything like that. And it'll be ready next month. So I'm excited, coming from this whole journey and things like that. So back to my point, you have to have patience
Yeah.
because, you drop off your car, you want to call the guy every day, like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? But these things take time, right?
Right. Right.
So you have to, make sure you know who you're dealing with, you know who you're working with, keep an eye on your stuff, be on top of it, and and just make sure that the quality of the work is exactly what you're looking for. So to come full circle, we're gonna have a big debut next month, by the end of next month,
Yeah, you have
and
to make sure you let me know.
yeah. So I haven't said that to anybody, so that's an exclusive. Extinct Legends is about
On
to
our
come out.
show.
Yeah, they're about to come out with their own classic car. That's going to be our signature car. It's going to be all over all our stuff. And we're excited to be back in the game because, you talk about as you go to the car shows and I'm filming
Mm.
everybody. Then they ask me what I'm driving. And I'm like, yeah, I'm driving you know, so I can't be the car guy without a classic car myself. So
That's true. You gotta get in the game. Well,
that's right.
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is awesome. And thank you for revealing that on tonight's show. I cannot wait for the reveal.
Yes.
But that goes back again about the networking. You built a relationship with this gentleman,
Yeah.
and that relationship he ended up helping you out. So it's
Right.
all about the network.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
all about the network. And I'm sure that once you can sleep easier because it's in the hands of someone that you trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I also saw on your website that you now have your first part. Now I don't know anything about cars, but it looks like a gear shift
Correct.
and it looks like it's in gold.
Right.
Okay, let's
Very,
talk a little bit about that project.
very interesting story. So again, this whole thing was born out of me being laid off and just
Mhm.
one thing just started leading to another, right? And so, before I get into that, I just want to tell everybody, if you can think about something, if you have a passion for something, you can make it happen. And these are true stories of just going out on a limb and you never know unless you try. And Extinct Legends is just doing its own thing and I'm just
Mhm.
like a facilitator, right? But
Right.
this thing is becoming what it wants to become. Like
Mhm.
so yes, we made our first car part. So in my group, like I told you, and not only just in the Acura Legend group. I'm on Facebook, and that's another resource. Facebook has a lot of groups, and I
Mhm.
love the groups. And there's so many car groups, and that's how you learn. You exchange ideas. You say, "Hey, my car is doing this and that, or whatever." Um, you know, and you got people with experience that'll help you along the way. So one of the problems with the Acura Legend is that Acura doesn't make any parts for it. Now, as I told you before, if you got a Chevelle, dude, you can get anything you want. They still make it to this day. I mean, you can get any piece. You could literally rebuild a Chevelle from a magazine and get every
Wow.
part you need. But it's not like that in the Acura world. And one of the common things is the gear shift, which was made out of plastic. The actual emblem that goes
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, it
Right.
cracks over time, and the plastic came off and it looks ugly, and you get in your car every time and it's just like it's ugly. So I'm like, in today's day of CDC, 3D printing, all this other stuff, I was like, there's got to be a way to make this part. And for the life of me, I couldn't find anybody to do it. I called a company in Canada. They were like, "Oh yeah, well the research and development is going to cost you this, and then you have to commit to 1,000 pieces, and all this stuff." And I was like, "I can't afford that." And I
Mhm.
went to this other company. I called this company in Japan, and was trying to get them to do it. Same thing, 500 piece commitment, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
So long story short, one day I'm looking, and I see this advertisement for this company that they do little knickknacks and things, and I called them and they're like, yeah, we can do that. Send us the measurements and blah 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 blah. And I took mine and did the measurements and everything, and we went back and forth a few times, and I ended up having them produce a part. They sent me the proof, and I put it in my gear shift. It fit
And it worked.
perfect,
Oh
and I
wow.
was like, you know what? I think I could sell these. And
Uh-huh.
so I ordered them, and as the silver ones came out, and I started blasting them out in the groups, they were like, "Oh man, this would be nice, but I wish you had it in gold." And I was like, "Hmm."
Yeah.
I said, "I already did all the work. They already have the specs. Let me call my company and see if they can make it in gold." And
Yeah.
sure enough, they made them in gold,
Wow.
and the rest is history. So they started selling like crazy. So it was amazing that
Mm.
just a little bit of thought, a little bit of footwork, and things like that was able to bring our first part into existence. And we already got a couple other hard to find parts that we're looking to do as well. So it's exciting, and just a little bit of thought, and we made our first car part, and it was just really amazing to go from a napkin to a finished product in hand.
Yeah. I hope you still have that napkin so you can frame it.
Yeah, for real,
For
for
real. And
real, for real.
put that car part next to the napkin. That is
And I still got my
amazing.
part. I still got my parts here. So yeah, yeah. So
That
I
is
got
amazing.
it.
Congratulations. I
It
mean,
is.
you've grown since last year.
Yeah, just since COVID. So,
Yeah.
and to take it a quick a note a little further, I like to feature people who are doing just like what we talked about,
Right.
doing some real work in the car industry and things like that. I've interviewed a lot of good people along the way, but I had my first international call. I met some guys who were out of Mexico,
Uh-huh.
and it's funny because I posted something from a car show. I went to a car show, filmed all this stuff, a big Volkswagen car show, and then when I got out the car show, I saw two Datsun 510s. Now Datsun 510s they have a big cult following, and you can't even touch one
Mhm.
of those. I mean, you're upwards of 50 grand to get a 510 nowadays.
Mhm.
So it's an old Datsun. Anyway, I posted those pictures, and I got about in one of my groups, I got about 450 hits in like the first hour or something like that when people saw
What?
this car. Yeah, and then these guys said, "Oh yeah, we worked on that part. We helped remanufacture this part." So long story short, you have to see it's a two-part video on my YouTube channel with
Okay.
SSS Restorers, and these guys are out of Mexico and they're restoring parts for Datsuns and BMWs. And same thing, just organic. These guys started doing this thing and making these parts, and it's amazing to see who's in the industry and who's doing these things. And there's a lot of people doing some great work, quality work, that just follow their passion and are doing big things. So they inspire me as well. It's like, well, I got to keep this thing going. I got to keep this thing going.
Wow. You know, as a female and when I started, when I bought my first car, a friend of mine that went to the church that I was attending at the time was a mechanic. And any female that went to him for car servicing,
Mm-hmm.
he always would give us training on the car.
Mm. That's awesome.
So by the time he got through with me, I had a Ford Festiva, the little
Mm.
now later.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time he finished with me, I could change the brakes,
Nice.
I could change the oil, I could check all that stuff, the windshield wiper and all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
could change a tire. I think that is so important, not
It
only
is.
for females, but
Mm-hmm.
for, young men,
Yes.
you know.
Absolutely.
And do you know of any places that do any type of training? And if not, I'm throwing that out there at you, because
Mm-hmm.
that would be something that's needed,
Right.
right? And yeah, so I'm just going to ask if you know of any places that do that. And I might have to just start partnering here in Atlanta. I might just have to start partnering with some mechanics that I know
Right.
to do that, because the main one is checking being able to change the tire, you
Right.
know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, off the top of my head, I don't know someone who's specifically doing that, but now that you said that, and our we being part of the D9, brothers and
Hmm.
sisters here, I think that that's an initiative that I want to go ahead and maybe
Yeah.
start locally in my chapter to start giving that automobile knowledge, that 101, because you
Yeah.
know a lot of times, as we think about being on the road and, our kids are getting on the road, we want to make sure our
Hmm.
kids are okay. And, you don't want to get pulled over in the wrong part of town at the wrong
Right.
time when you get a flat. And, you talk about calling AAA. Well, someplace, if you're back in the country, you might not even have service, right? And you don't
Right.
want to be
That's
sitting
true.
on the side of the road or whatever. So, yeah, I've always made sure that I taught my kids how to change a tire, right? And I
Hmm.
remember my dad taught my sister how to do oil changes and stuff like that on our old
Hmm.
car and things like that. So yeah, that's definitely a good skill. And you want to know about your car and things like that. You don't want to be taken advantage as a woman, right? Because
Right.
you can go to the mechanic and be taken advantage of just because you simply don't know. And
Right.
I remember there was a lady I used to work with, Gail, God bless her. She used to put chalk on the inside of her tires, chalk marks, and to make
Mm.
sure that when they said they rotated her tires, she
Yeah.
would look and see where the chalk marks were. She's like, no, you didn't, you
Right.
know. And so little things like that,
That's smart.
right? But you don't want to be taken advantage of, right? So yeah,
Right.
it's definitely good to have that knowledge, and I think you do make a good point. That's good for our young people to know, how to take care of themselves on the road.
Yeah, because everybody is not equipped to go to a 4-year institution.
Right.
Some kids their passion is using their hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a trade school
Yes.
is better for them.
Right.
And I think back in the day, I mean really back in the day, I used to
Mm-hmm.
see places that would, have a automotive
Right.
training, and they
Yeah.
will partner with the local tech
Mm-hmm.
schools
Yep.
to offer that type of training, and I don't see that anymore.
Right.
But it really is needed. So yeah, me and you have to get together and partner and see how we can bring that back, because and
Yeah.
like you said, as these kids are going down the road, as your wives and your sisters are going down the road,
Yeah.
we need to teach that type of stuff to them. They need to know, and that's just basic
Absolutely.
automotive 101.
Right.
Gail is right, because you think you can trust the dealership, but
That's
sometimes
right.
it just the dealership, Jiffy Lube, all of them,
Oh yeah.
and you just need to know basic stuff so that
True.
you'll know whether or not you're being taken advantage of or not.
Right. Exactly. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
we'll definitely partner up on that because I think that's a good initiative.
yeah, 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 and that's community service,
That's right.
giving back.
That's right.
Look, we have the what's the word? We have the environment to do it in, right? So
Hmm.
usually you have an idea and you're
Right.
looking for the people to pitch the idea to, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the people.
That's right.
So that's not an issue.
That's right. You're
We just
exactly
got to
right.
get together to put together the idea. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna work on that.
absolutely.
Let's see. We had a question. I mean, we
Yeah,
did.
we really did.
I got this question. I wanted to ask you this. So, out of all of the interviews that you've done so far,
Hmm.
what is your favorite interview that you've done so far on your show and why?
Man, that's a hard question right there. Because
At least one.
as you see
Or few.
behind me,
How about a few?
as you see behind me, my slogan is every car has a story. So
Mhm,
each one of the stories that I hear are amazing. And people are so eager to share their story. As
mhm,
we talk about history and the art of storytelling, of
mhm.
the art of storytelling. Jesus was a storyteller,
Right.
parables and things like that. People love to hear stories,
Mhm,
right? So I'm one of those people, and I think the one that stands out to me was one of my first. I spoke to a gentleman. His name is Terry Cook. You can Google him. Terry Cook is a famous hot rod guy from back in the 60s, heyday in the 60s, editor of Carcraft magazine, Hot Rod magazine, stuff like that. Terry made a couple cars that are very famous. Some are in famous car museums in Holland at this time, and
mhm.
he's done some work, and he's credited with the first person to use hydraulics and set a car on the ground. So
Really?
anyway, he lives up there in New Jersey. I was just getting started with the channel, and I don't really I forgot actually how I even like kind of came across him,
Mhm.
but I think I saw one of his cars, and I just Googled him and did a little research or whatever. I ended up finding his company that it was down here in Florida as well, and I ended up calling the number. He answers the phone, and I said, Terry, I'm starting out this channel. I want to feature some people who are, influential in the car industry and have done things and made contributions and whatever, blah, 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 blah. And he says, Dwayne, I tell you what, I would love to talk to you. He says, but I'm scared as crap. And he didn't say crap, but he says, I'm scared of crap of this COVID. So I'm not traveling anywhere. But if you want to come up to my house up here in New Jersey, I would gladly give you an interview and things like that. So I actually COVID was going on. It was I think I got a 40 something dollar round trip flight to New Jersey. I flew up there, interviewed Terry, came back, and it was just amazing. Like I was gonna ask him a couple questions on the phone. I had no idea he would entertain me coming to his house, and we spent a few hours together and things like that. I mean,
Mhm.
great guy, and that showed me that there's no barriers to this thing. A
Right.
person who I thought I wouldn't even get any time with, maybe I was looking to leave a voicemail, to a full blown interview. Uh, it's just been amazing, and then I think that kind of propelled me to do more and more, and really helped get Extinct Legends to where it is today. So I think that's one of my favorite interviews. Doesn't have the most hits on my website, but there's a lot of information
Yeah.
in the episode. And one of my first rough attempts at Final Cut. I've gotten better with Final Cut over the
Mhm.
time, but yeah, it's one of my favorite interviews, and I think I want to kind of, I know we're getting close to time, almost wrapping this up, but I do want to say I appreciate the people who are in the arena of YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. All these people are doing stuff on social media. It is a full time job,
It
and
is.
as I went back to work, I'm like, my job is cutting into my Extinct Legends time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I so want to do Extinct Legends 24/7. But I mean, it
Mhm.
takes time to post stuff on Instagram. It takes time to edit these videos and post it on YouTube. So I really had a newfound respect for people who are doing this. Every time I go on YouTube now, I like people's stuff. I
Yeah.
subscribe because I understand the work that goes on behind the scenes. And people think it's easy, and it's not.
No,
But
it
when
is.
you have a passion for it and you want to bring this material and highlight these people, I don't even want to highlight myself. There's so many
Right.
good people in this industry that are not getting the shine that I feel like they deserve. And I'm trying to give them their flowers while they're alive. And that's what drives Extinct Legends. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, so shout out to everybody like yourself. We're doing it. I went through your channel and I'm like, man, you got videos there. It's amazing. And you got to be proud of your babies, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's really, it's a rewarding thing to do what we do. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you because this is my first time being interviewed. I'm usually interviewing other people. And so it's kind of weird to be on this seat, this side of the table, right? But this is awesome. And I wish you much success as well going
Thank
forward.
you.
And I thank you so
Thank
much for the
you.
opportunity to be here tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it is very time consuming.
It
And
is.
but just like I wanted to create a platform where people could tell who they are, what they do, and give the inside perspective of what they know. And
Hmm.
like you said, these are not, extremely famous people, but
Hmm.
everybody, you said every car has a story. Everybody has a story.
That's
And
right.
I'm going to share this quick story with you. So I got a phone call from someone, and they were saying, I just don't understand, a mutual person, right? And I said, I interviewed that person. I told them what date,
Hmm.
and I said, go look at the show.
Mm.
I really think you would get it, right? Because
Hmm.
me and you were talking about dimensions to a person,
Right.
right? And that you only know the dimension that you know the person in. And
Right.
until you build that relationship with that person, do you
Hmm.
know other dimensions of them? Just like when you went to visit the gentleman, I think we said New Jersey.
Hmm.
Yeah. So when he picked up the phone, that was one dimension.
Right.
But when you got there and you left, you knew him in a
A
totally
whole
different
different one. Yeah.
light. And it's just good to give someone a platform for them to just share their story.
Yes.
And what I have noticed is that there's not been one person, Dwayne, that I
Mhm.
have reached out to that has said no. They may have said not now, but
Right.
they haven't said no, because it's not that people like talking about themselves.
Hmm.
It's just that very few people are given the opportunity to share
Right.
to this level,
Hmm.
and when someone asks them, they just quickly, say yes, I have something to say. And
Hmm.
so I think the work that you and I are doing is very important. It's different industries, but it's very important to allow people to share their story. And I think a
Absolutely.
lot of times people are misunderstood because people don't know their story. And if you take time out to get to know that individual, you, you may change your perception
That's right.
of a person.
Absolutely.
So I think the work that both of us are doing is very important. And you keep reaching out to people and allow them to tell their stories. Because I'm telling you, you've already, I call it pivots.
Hmm.
You've already pivoted a couple of times since you first started a
Oh
year
yeah. Oh yeah.
year ago. I mean, you
Yes.
got parts.
Hmm.
You flying out of town.
I can't believe it. I'll tell you, when I sit back and I look already, I said, man, I'm talking to people in Mexico that I would
It
have had
is
no business talking to these people, right? And things just continue to happen. And I'm so glad I spoke to that guy that day. I just opened my
Mhm.
mouth, and now I got a
Yep.
car out the deal. You know what I mean?
See?
So it's just, you never know, right?
Yeah,
And
you
so
never know.
I encourage people, follow your dream, and you can make things happen. Don't think that you can't.
Yeah,
And like, there's no boundaries. Just the only limit out there is yourself.
right, right.
So
That's the
yeah,
only
yeah.
limit. Now, your information is scrolling at the bottom. What is if someone wants to contact you? What is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah. My email is there. That's my personal email. There's also Dwayne at extinctlegends.com. send me something on Facebook, Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot. I try to post a couple pictures. That's the only things I can do. I tried to do the Twitter thing. I can't keep up.
Yeah, I can't keep up with all
I try to
three.
get a TikTok. I can't keep up. So, Instagram, Facebook, and my email address. I check those every day. So that's definitely the way to get in touch with me. If there's a car show coming up, or you have a classic car that you want us to be featured, or you're doing something in the automobile industry, definitely holler at me. We love to come see you, and we do travel, and definitely holler at us, because us, like as you know, Tina, we need the content, right? It's all about the
Yeah.
content. But we love, I love meeting people and
Mhm.
networking, and Extinct Legends continues to grow, and each person I meet and everyone I contact to, it's not for nothing. It comes back around somewhere in the back end.
Right.
So
That's right. That's right.
definitely, yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for allowing me to interview you. Finally getting on my show. I'm so excited. And
The pleasure was all mine. And the
I've
people,
learned
the
a lot.
people can't tell you no, Tina. That's why everybody says yes. Anything you need, I got you. You already know how it goes.
Look, I got that personality, don't I?
That's right. That's right. But this has been a blast. Thank you so much. I
Oh
appreciate it.
yeah, oh yeah. The pleasure's all mine. So thank you so much. Well, this is the end of our show. Now you hold on, Dwayne.
I
This
will.
is the end of our show. And I want to tell the viewing audience, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We were with Dwayne Peterkin with Extinct Legends. He has a classic car show on YouTube. Check him out. We will see you next week, same time, same place. Good night, everybody. Let's see. Here we go. Good night.
See you.